All right, it says I'm live. Let me jump over to YouTube. And I'm going to refresh this and make sure it's working. And we're live on YouTube. So, hey, everybody. Thanks for stopping by. Tonight, we have a special guest. I've already got him popped up on the screen. We've already tested the audio, so I know y'all should be able to hear me. Put it in the comments if you can hear us good or if anything screws up. But we got a lot to talk about, and we got a super special guest. I want to get across a bunch of stuff. I got an outline in front of me, a bunch of stuff I want to ask him. But first, we've got Mr. Tate here with us today, Tate Bradfield. We have a mutual friend in Jim. That's how I met you.
Yep.
And we're planning on doing some hunts in the future, and I'm super excited about it. But first 30 seconds here, just give us your quick off-the-cuff intro, who you are, what do you do, and then we got a bunch of stuff that we want to talk about.
Yeah, so my name's Tate Bradfield. Jim calls me Twinkie all the time, and that somehow became my nickname. I've been a guide and outfitter for pretty much all my adult life. A long time. My bread and butter is probably just Western elk hunting. But yeah, it's just I'm not too special of a person, but I've had a lot of guys kill elk. That's about the only thing I'm good at. So
well, and you just popped up something in my mind that I want to ask you, but I'm gonna put it off for here just a second. Something interesting. So, but that was too short of an intro. So go a little bit deeper. Like
go deeper. What do you want me to tell you and them?
So what do you do? Why should people call you? What kind of hunts do you do?
So I'm pretty unique in that, my whole outfitting business was switched from guiding elk hunts to now I teach people how to elk hunt on their own. And so, yeah, I do offer some guided hunts still, but most of what I do is courses. So I'm going to be teaching people how to hunt elk. I have a couple of different options. They can have a guided course where they're actually hunting elk. They get to kill one if they see one. Or I just have courses where they can come out for a lot cheaper and learn how to hunt elk in Utah. And basically, I walk them through the process. The reason I developed that was for a couple of reasons. I had a lot of clients that would book the lower end elk hunts, the $4,000 to $6,000 elk hunts. And most of the time, it was just guys that had gone and done it on their own and were extremely frustrated because they couldn't, they'd hunted 5 years, they hadn't killed one yet. And what ended up happening is I was like, why don't I just do this for a living? Because, I could charge less and still, teach them how to elk hunt. And that's kind of where that all started. And so that's what I have taken and ran with, and it's done really well for me so far. And it's really fun to be able to teach people. I'm kind of teaching people how to fish rather than just giving them a fish for a day, and that's what I really enjoy anyway. So,
and from my perspective and doing what I do in my experience, that's kind of a unique thing that I don't see out there a lot. Yeah. So that's super cool. Let's dive in a little bit deeper into that here in a little bit. But while we got Tate, I want to go through a bunch of fun and interesting stuff just off the cuff while we have his ear and just talk about Western hunting. So my background, I've lived in Tennessee since I was like 5 years old. I have taken 3 mule deer, 1 antelope, and I've had an elk tag 3 times, and I've never gotten an elk. Hopefully we can change that sometime down the road.
It will change soon.
My experience, for the most part, is all whitetail. So if you asked me, hey, Adam, we're going hunting this week. Do you want to hunt whitetail or do you want to hunt mule deer? I would say mule deer. That style of hunting, I just enjoy a lot more. So in Tennessee, we'll be hunting in the woods. I might sit in a tree all day and not see a single deer. But if we're mule deer hunting, we might be hiking all day just trying to find them. Glassing, that one's too small. But every time I've been mule deer hunting or elk hunting and seen mule deer, public land and private, it's like, hey, we saw 50 mule deer today. I've even hunted one place, we saw 200 mule deer. It's just, I'm not saying if you go hunting mule deer, you're just going to see 100 mule deer, but
yeah, that's actually the exception, I would say. If you're going to be hunting public land mule deer, there's certain areas where you're going to see, there's places where I see 300 elk a day, and there's places where I've hunted a whole week and seen 2.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to get across is that just the style of let's go find them as opposed to
awesome.
I'm going to sit in a tree and be bored all day, and but so let's jump in. I sent Tate an email a day or two ago with some fun and interesting stuff I want to touch on. So let's just hit a bunch of this real quick. Then I want to talk more about your business because I think it's interesting and really cool, and we tell people how to find you. Actually, real quick at the beginning, how can people find you?
So I have a website. It's my business is called Process Based Hunter. So just look up processbasedhunter.com and they'll be able to find that. I have a full description of all my courses and everything that I offer online. And yeah, the easiest way to find me is just my website.
Cool. And for everybody watching this after the fact, I will put those links in the video description so we can find it more easily.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Fire away. I don't know what I'm going to say.
Okay, so let's hit a bunch of stuff real quick. I could talk hunting for 5 hours, but I want to be mindful of your time. If you had to ballpark it, how many people have you guided?
Oh, man. A lot. I over 200 for sure.
All right. How many people miss? Guns. Let's talk guns. Rifles.
Rifle? About half, I would say.
Oh, man. Yeah. And how many people miss with bow?
Probably 75% will miss.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I would not guess that. So let's just keep hitting a bunch of topics. I really enjoy this, and I don't get to talk to people like you very often. So people with your experience.
I was going to say, I'm not that special, but I do have a lot of elk hunting experience. And
I mean,
deer as well, but.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That blows my mind that 50% of people miss.
50% of people miss. I've been on around 130 elk kills in the last 10 years. Average of 10 to 20 a year that I've guided for successfully. And I would say, even the ones that I guide successfully, a lot of them miss one time before they kill one, or they'll miss the elk and then kill the same elk that they just missed. But a lot of times.
So to me, a success is you put somebody on an animal. Like if they miss, that's tough beans. That's their
problem. I mean, realistically, that's my job, right? But
so quick segue here for a second. So I drew an alternate elk tag for Montana year before last, where I applied. I didn't draw, but then so many people turned tags in where Montana. Montana Wildlife called me with like a week and a half left of season and said, "Hey, we got a tag for you." I called around a bunch of outfitters. The cheapest one was $6,000. And I said, "Oh man," I'm like, "Oh, $6,000," and I'm like, "My wife's going to kill me." And I'm like, "Well, if I shoot one, that will be a little bit better. At least we got something for it. But if I spend $6,000 and then don't shoot one, I'm going to talk to a bunch of these guys." So call a bunch of people, and the one that I was like, okay, I might be able to squeeze out and find some money to pay for this. The guy says his success rate is 30%, meaning 30% of the time he puts somebody on an animal. And I was like,
that's probably generous.
Probably so.
For Montana.
I would trust your knowledge on that by far. And I'm thinking, there's no way I can pay $6,000 to hope to have a 30% chance of pulling the trigger on an elk. So I was like, I called him back. I said, "Y'all have my tag back. I can't do it." So my brain is going squirrely, but I'm going to follow this list and we're going to get to some more stuff. Let's keep hitting the list. All right. We talked about how many people miss, and that's super blows my mind. Have you ever had any interesting characters or oddball stories of people who you've taken out? Anything that sticks out?
I have a few. Where do I start? Actually, so I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. A lot of people know us as Mormons, and everybody thinks we're polygamists. We're not. And this guy comes out, and he was hunting with me, and he had a daughter. And
Okay.
I'm married. I have 3 kids, very happily married. My wife is beautiful. And he knew that, but he was like, man, you're such a good guy. Would you consider dating my daughter? And I was like, no, I'm married. And he was like, I know that, but I'm sure you're going to take just as good care of my daughter as you do your current wife. I was like,
wow.
I was like, what? You're messed up. But that, I mean, that was a really funny experience. And he was a super great guy, but he was a little bit, but he didn't believe me. Like for 7 days, he was like, dude, you got to take my daughter on a date. I was like, whatever, you know? And then
it's hard to find good people these days.
It is. I mean, I try and be a good person. So I guess I was flattered at least, you know?
Sure.
But, another experience I had is I was guiding a guy, and we were archery hunting, and, you know, I'm 40, 50 yards behind this guy trying to call an elk in past him. And he shoots a little bit, in my opinion, prematurely. He was a good shot with his bow. He shot about 80 yards, ended up shooting under it. And then he walked back to me and swore at me and was like, you know, it's like, this is your fault. I didn't kill that elk. And I was like, dude, I'm 50 yards behind you. I don't know what you want me to do. So there's one. There was an 82-year-old client, is the oldest guy that I've ever got an elk. And he's such a nice guy. And he comes up. We hiked 2 miles into the middle of nowhere, basically to where he was like, I can't take another step. And we just sat down for like 2 hours, and I was calling in elk, just cow calling, basically making it sound like there was a little herd of elk in this little canyon. And it took about 2 hours, and sure enough, this spike bull walks up over a hill.
Wow.
And I was like, there's an elk. There's an elk. And he's like, there's a what? I was like, shh. And he just could not stay quiet. He couldn't hear me if I whispered. And he did end up killing that elk. Man, it was a little bit of a fiasco because he just could not hear me. And we called that bull into about 250 yards, and he smoked it. But it was quite the experience with him.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he was a cool dude though. But 82 is the oldest guy I've got in an elk, and honestly, there was a fair bit of luck in that. But
I'll take luck.
Yeah, it's about 40% skill and 60% luck, in my opinion. But
all right, let's keep on jumping down.
Yeah.
So one of the things that boggles my mind about hunting out west is the tags. So
yeah,
Tennessee, you could come to my house in Tennessee. You want a deer hunt with me? Go to Walmart, buy your deer tag. Let's go hunting. You have the same rights as me. We can shoot 3 does a day here and $2 a year. You want to hunt deer in Tennessee? Come on, let's do it. You want to hunt out west, and that those rules apply for Georgia, Alabama,
most
Florida,
whitetail hunting states,
Mississippi. You're exactly right. Texas. So that's my experience in the past 20 years. Is you want to get some deer? Let's go do it.
Mm-hmm.
But out west is not the case. And I told you I've had 3 elk tags. I've taken 3 mule deer and an antelope. Before I ever went out west, the first time I hunted out west, I got to know a guy. My good buddy Clayton lives in Montana. He invited me out, and it was I wouldn't use the word nightmare, but it was very stressful, very confusing for me the first time for applying to Montana. It still is to this day, and it's very similar for all the western states where here's the state, and there's some of them have over 100 zones, and it's like, can I just apply to hunt the whole state? And if I get it, no. You got to apply for these little bitty counties, and it's so confusing. This area of the state, you know, however many miles diameter, it might take 10 years to draw a tag. But then this other corner, you might only have to apply for 2 years, and then you get it. Me, the first time I applied for Montana, I got an elk and deer tag. And my buddy couldn't believe it. He said, I don't know how you got that lucky, but it worked. So what would be your advice to people who are like me. Maybe they're in the Southeast, or maybe they're in the West and they never tried. I don't know. What would be your advice for how to go about figuring out the tags?
That's a great question. And it's one that I'm still trying to figure out a little bit myself, because the states are all different. Whether you
Every
go
state's
to
different.
Idaho, Utah, every single one's going to have a different application service, a different point system, different general season tags. Some states don't have any general season tags, and they're all a draw, right?
Yep.
And so what I usually would tell guys is pick 3 to 5 states to apply in. If you're an older guy, probably 65 and up, it's probably not going to be as worth to put in for points, because you're not going to have as much time. I would probably apply for the states that don't have a point system. That's just a straight lottery every year. So probably, and those two are basically New Mexico and Idaho. So you have just as good of a chance of drawing an elk tag as not as me, because I'm a resident, but like as anybody else that's a non-resident in Idaho. And some of the draws are pretty decent, to be honest with you, in those states. So that's probably what I'd recommend for the older guys. For the newer guys, I'd pick 3 to 5 states and learn about how they do their draws, and I would focus on those states. And you do it right, you're able to get a tag. You're able to get an elk tag in a decent zone about every 2 to 4 years, if you do it correctly. Or even just a general over-the-counter tag. Every 2 to 4 years, you're able to get a tag that's huntable. And what I would do is find states that, probably 2 to 3 states that are easier to draw in, Colorado, Montana, places like that. And then I would pick a couple of states that's hard to draw in. You might have to wait 10 to 15, 20, 25 years to draw a tag for. And the reason I would do that is because a lot of guys make the mistake of just building points and not burning them. So when they finally do draw that tag of a lifetime that took them 15 years to draw, they don't know what the heck they're doing. If you just get out there and hunt and you try and you're failing in units that are not as good, when you do draw a tag of a lifetime, it's so easy. It's not if you kill an elk, it's how big. It's just a no-brainer to me to hunt every 3 to 5 years. And then, 10, 15 years down the road, when you do that, draw that really amazing tag, that's when you're going to be able to kill the monster. And I have yet to kill a monster, by the way. I guide so much that, my biggest bull is a small 6-point elk. I've only ever killed 2 bulls. Every other elk I've ever killed was a cow. But it's just because I choose to give my time to other people. I will like to change that eventually, but it's really just about getting good at elk hunting. And that usually takes time, and it also takes a mentor. And that's what I'm trying to be to other people too in this.
Yeah. If I didn't have other people helping me, like I said, my buddy Clayton,
yeah,
I would have never hunted mule deer or elk or antelope. Every single one of those animals, I had help from somebody else.
Oh yeah. And you need it when you're starting. It's not like I started out not having anybody to help me. So,
I mean, I would not have ever started hunting whitetail if a guy at work didn't help me get started and show me some spots. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let's jump to a couple more topics.
Yeah.
All right, so your guide experience in elk hunting. When I think of, I am not an elk expert. I've never shot an elk. But when I hear elk, my mind goes to 300 Win Mag, 7 Mag. So you've guided a lot of people to elk. What would you suggest if I called you and said, hey, I'm coming hunting with you, I'm going to buy a new rifle? What would you suggest somebody pick up? Maybe your top 1, 2, 3.
People are going to hate my answer for this, but honestly, what I tell my clients when they come out and they say, what rifle should I buy? Sorry, I'm on a road. I'm in the car to avoid my children because they will destroy me. And so I'm on a little bit of a road if you hear that. But I would say don't buy a new rifle. Bring the rifle that you used to hunting with your whitetail. if you're using a slug gun, obviously go buy a straight, not a straight weld or whatever. But like if you're using a 270 for whitetail, bring it for elk. Even a 6.5 Creedmoor, if you're using that for elk and you're confident, or for deer and you're confident with it, bring that out for elk. What I run into a lot is, by the way, 7 mag is probably my favorite elk cartridge. I like it more than the 7 PRC, not because it's better or anything like that. It's just, it's my baby, right? But
sure.
But what I've seen in the past is a lot of guys will get a new cartridge for a specific elk hunt. They won't be as confident with the rifle, and usually it's more recoil than they're used to for their whitetail. And then they miss the elk because they're just not familiar with the ballistics of the rifle and all that kind of stuff. So the guys, I've killed an elk with a 243. You don't need a bazooka to kill an elk. You just need to hit it in the right spot. And I don't care what cartridge you use. If you use a 300 Weatherby, if you use a 300 Win Mag, 300 PRC, if you don't hit an elk in the right spot, it will go a long ways. I shot an elk. The first elk I ever shot, actually, I didn't hit it good. I hit it 4 times, but my scope had got bumped, and I hit it all in the same spot in the guts. And that elk I tracked it for about 18 hours total.
Ooh.
I found it a day and a half later. And it was still on its feet. So, if you don't hit them well, they're not going to die. And that elk wasn't that far. It was maybe 200 yards. But I ended up finding it and shooting it with a 243, and that's what I finished it off with. So generally speaking, though, I like the mid-grade calibers for elk, 7 mag, 6.8 Western. I have nothing wrong with a 300 Win Mag as long as you're confident in it. The mistake most people make, though, is buying a new cartridge, trying to make up for accuracy with a cartridge. And that's just, there's no substitute for accuracy.
Yep. I'm with you. So I'm kind of on this journey where I'm trying to film a big game hunt with every cartridge and marking it off the list, which is obviously a long list. But last year I got 2 whitetail and 1 mule deer, all with 300 Win Mag, testing some different ammo and stuff. And all 3 of those were my furthest shots on deer. I got my mule deer at 430 yards with 300 Win Mag, and then 2 does, whitetail does, at 300 yards.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I had practice with that gun, and I was pretty confident. But yeah, but I 1000% understand what you're saying, and I absolutely agree with everything you just said. So that's fantastic advice. Appreciate all this knowledge you're dropping on us real quick.
I love it. This is what I do for a living, so this is great.
Oh, I love it. People stop me at the store, and I can sit here and talk about this stuff for an hour. So, and I assume your answer to that question would be the same for deer and elk, right? I mean, it's kind of the same.
Oh yeah,
same thing.
I killed deer with I shot a deer with a 300 or 300 PRC once, and I mean, that was more gun than you need, obviously, but it killed it.
My first mule deer, I was saying I got my tag in Montana the first time applying. I asked my buddy, what gun should I take?
Yeah.
And he grew up in Montana, taking elk, deer, bunch of them. He says, bring the biggest rifle you have that you are confident with.
I actually agree with that to a degree.
And it was my 338 Lapua. I mean, and I shot a mule deer with it.
Hey, it kills it dead. I had a friend kill a deer with a 338 Win Mag, and I mean, it killed it dead, but it blew a hole through it the size of my fist.
Yeah, you're sacrificing a lot of meat when you're doing that.
You are. And here's the thing is that you always are with elk, I would recommend bringing the biggest rifle you're comfortable with. But if that's a 6.5 Crude, honestly, I would say more than half the elk I've shot personally were with a 308. And most of those were one-shot kills. Usually when you shoot an elk, no matter what you shoot an elk with, even a 338 Lapua. I watched a guy shoot an elk with a 50 BMG and we never found it.
Wow.
Yeah, like no matter what you shoot them with, a lot of the time they're not going to just fall over. They're going to eat the lead, and they're going to either just stand there and eat 2 or 3 shots and then fall over, or they're going to run off into the trees and die, 100, 150 yards away, 50 yards away, whatever. They don't, no matter what you shoot them with, usually they don't just fall over. Usually they're on their feet, they take a little bit of lead, or they just, take a minute to bleed out and they fall over. They don't just usually drop.
Yeah. Somebody just said, how about 50 BMG in the chat? Yeah. All right. Let's keep going. I don't want to hold you too long. There's a bunch of stuff we got here. So let's talk about bullets real quick.
Yeah. I love bullets. This is great.
Me too. I just started nerding out on reloading. This is my reloading stuff right here. So same question about the guns, but bullets. So, hey, what should I shoot?
That it's such a catch-22. I've shot elk and deer and antelope with all kinds of different bullets. With elk, the burger bullets I don't usually recommend if you're gonna. I'm gonna preface this, okay? I've killed a couple elk with burger bullets out of a 7-mag, and they performed great. But they were also the longest shots I've ever taken at an elk. One of them was, let's see, almost all of them were over 300 yards. Between 300 and 450 yards. The longest one I ever took was with a burger bullet out of a 7-mag, 162 grain burger VLD hybrid, and I hit it 765 yards, one shot. And it was laying down. I shot it. It stood up, walked about 10 feet, and fell over. Now, what I hate about burger bullets is that usually when they're really close, burger bullets are designed to kind of hit and then blow up at closer ranges so that all their energy is dumped into the animal. And on thinner skin, like deer, thinner skin game, usually that's a pretty good thing because they'll drop. But on an elk, like I said, even if you like full force all the energy into an animal, into the elk, they're usually not just going to fall over. And I had a couple of clients use a burger, same thing, 7-mag, 162 grain VLD, 100 yards. He shot it, hit it where what should have been a perfect heart shot. And it hit a rib, blew up, completely blew up, spread shrapnel all over one lung, all the way into the guts, and did not hit the heart or the other lung. That's impressive that it blew up that fast. It was almost like a varmint bullet on an elk. So if you're going to be shooting longer ranges, I think burgers are great. If you're going to be shooting close ranges, probably not. As a general rule of thumb, I like something that's going to hold together a little bit better. An interlock, an Accubond, anything like that that's going to have a good amount of, copper bullets even are really good for elk because they pass through. I don't generally like the bullets that are going to dump energy into the animal. Because there's a lot of energy in a rifle, no matter how much energy you put into it. If you're using a decent caliber, 243 or larger, within the reasonable ethical hunting ranges of that caliber, you're going to have a lot of energy, especially when you consider like you kill elk with bows. So like you're talking almost zero energy. It's all cutting power, right? So when you talk about the bullets just getting a good pass through, you're really killing an elk most of the time by blood loss. So I want a bullet that's going to go through it that I can then track that animal with if it runs into the trees. Even if it's a good shot, usually, like I said, they're going to run into the trees. So I want something that's going to have a good pass through, make a hole like the size of my thumb. There it is. My thumb's right there. The size of my thumb, even the size of my pinky, just to have a good blood loss. And that's what I like in an elk bullet, I should say.
And I've taken a lot of deer because, like I said, in Tennessee, we can get 2 bucks and 3 does per day.
That's disgusting to me. I need to come out and hunt with you.
Normally, between me and my kids, we take at least 5 or 6 whitetail just in Tennessee, not to mention everywhere else.
Yeah.
But last year was the first year that I hunted with copper bullets.
Mm-hmm.
And I shot my mule deer at 430. It went completely through.
Yep.
I shot 2 does at 300, completely through. And then I shot another doe at like 175, completely through. 3 out of the 4 dropped right where they stood, and the one went maybe 20 yards. So
yeah. And copper bullets, the amount of technology changes that they've had in copper bullets in like the last 5 years even has made me like copper bullets a lot more. I killed a bear 2 years ago, really big bear, like 350-pound black bear, 330-pound black bear, 6-foot bear, 450 yards across a canyon in Idaho with a 6.5 Creedmoor. Like, it wasn't even a big caliber, but it went right through it. So they have really good penetration. Bears are kind of weird. Bears are kind of like elk, but they don't bleed. Generally with bears, I like something that's going to be, that's going to create a big hole. I actually prefer larger calibers on black bears because they don't always act like they've been hit and they don't bleed well. Black bears have they have multiple, like, they're really fatty. Let's just put it that way. And so when you shoot them, a lot of times a fat layer will just slide right over that hole. I have surgery on my shoulder a little while ago, so it's hard for me to use both hands. It'll slide over the hole, and then it'll stop the bleeding. And it makes you do it. But if you have a really big hole, usually that mitigates that, that sealing of that wound. So usually I recommend, a 30 caliber or larger on black bears. I've killed them with smaller calibers. It's possible, but there's a good, better, best thing in all of these. But as far as Western bullets go, honestly, I would choose any bullet that's going to be good for a thicker skinned animal that's accurate out of your gun. I think a lot of this has to do with what your gun shoots the best, right?
Yes.
Accuracy matters the most.
Yes.
You can use a cruddy bullet, and as long as you hit it in the right spot, it'll kill it. You can use a Full Metal Jacket bullet. If you hit it in the heart and the lungs, it's going to die. I don't recommend that, by the way, but it would do it, right? So,
yep. I tell people that at least once a week. So all the comments, all the messages that come in, I answer everything every day. People ask me about bullets a lot. Hey, I just bought this whatever XYZ today, or I just inherited my dad's, I'm about to go deer hunting. What should I shoot out of it? And my answer every time is the one that your gun shoots the best.
It's 100% true.
I can tell you what my 300 Win Mag or my 30-06 shoots the best, and I can point you to my videos where we've done good groups and bad groups. But your Remington 700
is going to be totally different than mine.
Exactly. Yep. Even if you have the same gun, it might not group the same way.
That's true. And that's another thing is that, I just started my own YouTube channel. I haven't had a ton of time to actually do stuff on it yet because I've been, basically building this business and making sure I have the best business I could possibly have. I switched my business strategy a little bit. Like I said, I used to guide hunts. Now I teach people, but it's almost, I feel like when I'm on the YouTube channel and I'm like, hey, this gun's super accurate. It's hard to say whether the next gun you buy is going to be super accurate with the same load. And so I think it's not a disservice. It's not dishonest, obviously, but it's almost misleading in some ways to say that one gun's going to be super accurate and others are not going to be super accurate, or that they're all going to be super accurate because they're all at a different stage on the production line and they all have different reamers. They all have different things. It's hard to, it's hard to say whether they're going to be accurate or not with each different load. So,
and there's also user error and skill involved too. So
yes,
I shoot a lot. I practice several times a week. I'm not saying I'm some kind of excellent shooter, but if your gun's not grouping well,
doesn't matter.
It could be that you just can't shoot.
You just suck. That's all there is. There's been times where I've thought about myself that way. Won't lie. So
hey, me too. Me too. I mean, you go down the list, right? Take it back apart, put the rail on, torque the scope rings, do all the things, get a good solid rest. But at the end of the day, you still got to practice.
It's true. And like I did a shooting challenge with Jim like a month ago, and it showed that I hadn't practiced. I did well. Like everybody there was an awesome guy. They were all good shots, but it definitely, to myself, it showed that I hadn't practiced. There was some other factors in there that made, the the shots hard because we weren't getting accurate ranges and things like that. But it showed that I had not practiced in quite a while. And part of that was because of my shoulder hurting and everything else. But excuses are excuses. And if you don't practice, no matter what the reason is, you're going to suck. And does that make sense?
Yeah. And
it's true.
And bench rest shooting is completely different from hunting shooting. So I've practiced hunting on steel out to 900 yards, and just using like, we have to shoot 900 yards off this log, dude. Like, I could give my grandmother my 6mm Creedmoor, and she could hit a piece of steel at 1,000 yards. It's not that hard to do it from a bench rest.
No,
it's not. Or my wife or whatever. I could hand just about anybody one of my rifles that I've really got honed in.
Easily within
yards, boom.
Even if there's wind, if you have a decent rifle and can call your shots, 2 or 3 shots, you're going to be ringing still at 1,000.
Yeah. If you have to shoot off a rock or your bag, or you just had to sprint 50 yards to get in location, you're doing this, that's a whole different ball game. So,
and what I usually do, this is something that I'm going to recommend to all the people that are listening. I don't even know how many people are listening, but this is a great conversation, is practice shooting. This is the number one reason people go home without an elk if they get a shot opportunity on any hunt, not just with me. They don't practice. They're like, man, I'm shooting, at 100 yards. I'm hitting the same hole every time. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't matter. Shoot off of a bipod, shoot off of your backpack, laying down at the range, shoot off of, shoot standing, shoot kneeling, shoot all these really difficult shooting scenarios. And even if you don't have a long range, 200-300 yards, if you can hold a really good group, it's hard for me to get up there with that shoulder, but of like, half the size of a dinner plate at 100 yards, if you're standing, realistically, you're not going to shoot more than 100 yards standing anyway. So if you can do all those things and have good groups at 100 yards, you're going to have good groups at further ranges. Other thing I'm going to recommend is that when you are hunting elk, be okay with hanging back a little bit on range. Elk are usually in herds. The bulls at certain times of the year are alone, but most of the time they're going to be in herds of at least 2 to 30. They're almost never just alone. So it's okay. There's a lot of eyes. The closer you get, likely it is that you're going to get busted. So 200 yards or less, that's usually that really heavy danger zone. But if you hang back between 300 and 400 yards, usually you're going to have all the time in the world to relax. That's what I like to do with my clients. Is they're like, I've never shot 300 yards before. It's like, have you shot 200? They're like, yeah. It's like, well, it's just like shooting 200, but 100 yards further. So I like to set them up between 300 and 350 yards, and I'll make sure that we have all the dope that we need to, so that we're having ethical shots. But then that way I'm able to set them up in a prone position where I want them to be. I'm able to set them up over a log, whatever it is, get them as steady as possible, have them slow their breathing down. And actually, I'll have them, just take dry fire shots at that animal for, 3, 4, 5 minutes before I have them pull the trigger. When I do that with my clients, I would say that on average, when I'm able to do that, 80 to 90% of guys are going to hit the elk that they aim at. If I don't do that, it's 50. So, being able to hang back a little bit and take your time, but get in a better shooting position is better than being close and shooting standing or shooting kneeling, because you're just that much more stable. It's just more ethical if you hang back a little bit and take all the time in the world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So before we get off here, let's talk a little bit more about your business. So give us kind of like the specific classes, and let's just talk about everything that you have out there in your offering that people could come do.
I appreciate you. I really do. So basically, what I do is I teach people how to elk hunt. The reason I call it process-based hunting is because learning how to elk hunt is not a one and done deal. Usually It took me till I was 18 to kill my first elk. I've killed at least one.
I still don't have one.
And it's a process. My goal with this is to take the first 4 or 5 years of people sucking at elk hunting and getting that all out in 7 days. I'm gonna basically flood their brain with as much, or 3 days even. I'm gonna flood their brain with as much knowledge of all the mistakes I've made and all the things I've done right as fast as I can. So the three things that I offer right now, I'm actually pretty much booked out of my mentor drop camps where people could come and kind of do a DIY thing. I'm going to offer more of those next year and expand that. But I have 2 courses available, whether that's for this year or next year. I have what's called a semi-guided elk course where guys come out. They spend 7 days with me and my team. The first day of the course, they are able to hunt elk, or excuse me. I'm sorry, I had a Biden moment. But they're able to come out. I give them a course on the first day. All day, I just flood their brain with as much information as possible. Days 2 through 6, they're in the field with me and my guides. I have 1 guide per 4 hunters. They're going to have a guide with them about half the time. And we help them recognize the things they're doing right, the things they're doing wrong. We're going to help them get on elk. It's a semi-guided hunt. We're going to try and kill an elk. They got an elk tag in their pocket. And then the last day, we're going to go to a high fence elk ranch where I will shoot 1 cow elk and then show everybody how to correctly butcher that in the field, and some basic backcountry meat skills to keep meat good if it's hot weather or whatever kind of weather it is basically. Those are $3,500 for a 7-day thing with all your meals and lodging included with that. And then I also offer just an elk hunting course. I teach all the same stuff that I teach in that semi-guided course, but it's not quite as hands-on in the fact that you don't have an elk tag in your pocket. We're going to still go out and find elk, and I'm going to teach you where elk usually are at different times of the year, because it's not the same. Elk are going to be very, in the summer, they're going to be in a completely different spot than the winter, and it might be 100 miles away. So that's basically how it works, though. But that course is only $879. And that was actually the one I was talking to you about. Like, hey, you should come out. We should have some of your clients come out. Not your clients, but some of your followers come out, and you come out, help me do the course. I don't know if anybody'd be interested in that or not, but $879. I basically just flood your brain with as much information as I can for 3 days.
Sweet. And yeah. That's something else. It's one of those things. Where else can you go do that? Especially from somebody you can trust and who knows what they're talking about. You know what I mean?
I try to know what I'm talking about.
Well, see, I really don't talk about this a lot because I'm just kind of older I get, the more I just kind of figure out it's not real good to talk bad about people.
No, but it doesn't do any good.
There are lots of people on the internet, even people who do what you do and do what I do, that are no good. And you should not listen to them or hang out with them. But I met you through Jim. Mm-hmm. Jim's a good dude.
He's a good dude.
I love Jim. So you and Jim are on the very few people that I think are cool dudes and trust.
I try and live up to that. I can say that.
I won't go down that any further, but I think everybody, you know what I'm saying. Everybody watching.
Yeah, well, a lot. Here's the thing: is that I was taught by people that there was people in my life that taught me how to hunt. Whether it was, mostly for mule deer. Honestly, my dad wasn't a very good elk hunter. He was good, but he wasn't great. He was a great mule deer hunter. He's the one that taught me how to hunt mule deer. There were other people in my life that were amazing elk hunters that mentored me, and were kind enough to take me to some of their honey holes, and to teach me some of the skills that they had learned. And unfortunately, in today's day and age, there's not a lot of mentors out there, and there's a lot of people getting into hunting that weren't interested before, that don't have a mentor. They don't have that friend. They don't have a family that takes them out hunting. And they don't have that person to guide them and help them become better. So a lot of time they come out elk hunting and they might get lucky. They might kill one, or they might spend 5-6 years just sucking and being frustrated. And what I really want to do with this business is create a platform for people that they can come and be okay with not knowing what the crud they're doing. And they're not going to get put down. I'm really trying to be not a father figure per se, but really the mentor figure for the people that want to come forward and learn about Western hunting. And eventually I'd like to expand into whitetail hunting as well, because to be real, there's way more people that are going to get into whitetail hunting than Western hunting.
And it's easier to get a tag for whitetail.
It's way easier to get a tag for. You can go hunting whitetail every year. I could kill 20 whitetail a year if I wanted to, but it's, if I'm lucky, I lease ranches where I get private land tags, and I'm lucky to kill 2 elk a year. Usually it's 1. But by the way, I've killed an elk every year personally for like 11 years. Most of them were cows, right? Yeah. But the biggest thing that I can tell people, and the biggest source of advice, would be find that mentor. Whether it's me, whether it's somebody else in your life that's hunted elk, whoever it might be, find that mentor, because you will save yourself a lot of money if you can find somebody that knows what they're doing. Like, I've guided for moose, and honestly, I was super lucky the first time I guided for moose. The guy that I worked for at the time, this is actually a really good story. So the guy I worked for at the time, he hired me as an elk guide. This is the first year I've guided for elk. And I just was hungry to show people what I loved about elk hunting so much. It was archery hunting, and I had 4 clients come in during the archery season, and all 4 of them shot at an elk. 0 of them killed one. 0.
Oh.
4 of them had multiple shot opportunities, might I add. And the outfitter that I worked for was so impressed with my ability to call an elk. He's like, "You want to do a moose hunt?" I was like, "I've never hunted moose in my life." I was like, I've seen a few. I know where some are at. And he's like, "Well, you got 4 days to learn up and figure out how to do it. Your client gets here. He wants to kill it with a bow."
Oh.
I was like, "What? You just put a whole new spin on it." And I did. I researched it, and I did all those things. But really, and he ended up day 2. I called in a bull moose. He shot it with his bow at 15 yards.
Wow.
And now moose are pretty stupid. They're not that hard to kill. I won't lie. But depending on where you go, the moose around me, they don't really get pressure from humans. So they're not really afraid of us. But what really made me be able to do that was my knowledge of animals in general and their habitat. The only thing I really needed to learn how to do was call them in. And once I learned how to call them in, I was still a little bit lucky, to be honest with you. Getting a moose on the ground really wasn't that difficult. So once you can learn the habits of animals and why they do what they do, that's the real fundamentals. A lot of people think that calling an elk in is the fundamentals. It's not. It's their body language. It's how they behave. It's how, why does an elk run away from a bugle instead of coming into it sometimes? To know that answer, you literally just have to get out there and watch them. And so that's what I'm really trying. I got off on a tangent there. I apologize, but
no, that's what we're here to talk about.
You really want to be able to have somebody that has watched them. You're going to save yourself. A lot of guys will go on an elk hunt, and to be frank, a lot of outfitters suck. So if you want to go elk hunting with an outfitter to learn how to do it or to kill an elk, a lot of outfitters are terrible businessmen and they're terrible planners. I myself, as an outfitter, when I first started, am guilty of being a pretty cruddy outfitter for about the first year and a half. Once I figured out how to do it correctly, I got a lot better. But that's one of the reasons I developed the mentor system is I have very little faith in most outfitters. Because they're just people, and usually what it ends up being is they're hunters and outdoorsmen that wanted to get into guiding because it was a great, they like being outside, but they're not good with people. And
been on a few of those.
Me too. And like I said, unfortunately, I was that outfitter for about a year. I had a year where, there were some other circumstances that, like my wife had a baby 4 months premature right in the middle of hunting season. So I was pretty MIA. I was distant with all my clients. My mind was totally on something else.
Sure.
And so I apologize if any of those clients are listening. I apologize to all of those people. But I took that pain very, very seriously. And the reason I developed this business is because what can I offer people, whether they kill an elk or not? And that's really just knowledge. I can offer an amazing hunting experience, like an amazing Western experience. I can offer a friendship, and I can offer them knowledge that will set them up to save money for years to come.
All good things.
I hope, yeah, that's all good things.
That's not easy to find. So,
no.
One real quick story while we're talking about that, something just popped up in my head. So, I'll leave it vague, and I know the guy will never watch this anyways, but we're hunting with a guy, you know, is an outfitted thing with landowner tags.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy's with us. He had his guide that he had people taken out, but this particular day he was hunting the same zone we were. So we're just riding around in a pickup truck glassing. And there was this, I love unique animals. If I see a deer that's, you know, perfect rack or an ugly one, I'm going to shoot the ugly one every time. That's just me.
I'm the same way.
And this animal was real funky. I won't get any more detailed than that. And I was like, oh, I love it. and this guy said, oh, no, that's a good one. You're just a YouTuber. We'll get you a YouTuber sized one. And then he went and shot it. I wanted to hit him in the mouth so bad. But me being a nice guy, I just ate it. I never hung out with these people before. I just said, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting one. It's just smaller and not as cool. But that's just something that happened to me. But so I'll get all your stuff put in the link down below here in a second so everyone watching it can check it out. But you have a YouTube people can subscribe to.
Yes.
And an Instagram. I'll put all that down below.
Perfect.
But everyone should check out your website, which is processbasedhunter.com, right? I said that right.
And here's another thing I wanted to say is that I would love if anybody listening is interested in doing like an exclusive course with me and Adam WHOTEEWHO, please email me via my website or just call me or text me. My cell phone's listed on my website. That's not a thing that most outfitters do or most people that, you know, try and get a big reach do, but I want to be able to talk to people.
Sure.
You know, text me, call me, email me if you're interested in maybe doing something with me and Adam in, I think maybe August or something like that, preseason, and doing like an exclusive course with me and Adam. Just
Sure.
hit us up, and if we can get enough guys to want to do it, we will do it for that $879 price, and we'll make it as cool as possible.
So real quick, just jump into that, what all that comes with and means.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically what that would mean is I provide your lodging during that. I don't provide all of your food, but I provide I provide some coolers, things for you to keep your stuff good in, freezers if you need to, so you can buy your food if you land in a plane and come out. I do provide your first meal when you arrive into camp because everybody's going to be jet lagged and tired. And so I provide your first meal into camp, and then it's just going to be a little bit of a laid back experience. You know, in the mornings and the evenings, we're going to be out looking for elk, and I'm going to show you where they're at. During the day, we're going to have different courses on elk calling techniques, the herd dynamics at different times of the year, because elk herds change throughout the year. In the summer months, the bulls are going to be mostly alone. As it transitions into the rut, they're going to be, you know, cowed up with satellite bulls around the main herds. After the rut, those bulls are going to be off on their own for the most part. And so, you know, knowing that about elk helps you recognize where you need to start looking for elk. We're going to be learning about shooting. We're going to have some, you know, everybody, you can bring your rifle, or we're going to have a couple rifles there so that people can actually learn how to shoot, you know, 300 to 500 yards. I wouldn't necessarily recommend everybody should shoot 500 yards at an animal. Most of the time, I don't like shooting 500 yards at an animal. But being skilled enough to shoot 500 yards makes the 200 to 300 yard shots just easy as pie. So we're going to learn a lot of different things, but it's a little bit of a laid back experience. You just get to know me and my team. We're going to be learning a lot about elk and just Western hunting in general. And, you know, I just try and make it as fun as possible. We're going to have some games that we're going to play. We're going to have some giveaways during the camp. And it's just a fun experience.
I like games.
I do too.
And I like to win.
I'm not that competitive, but in hunting, I'm super competitive. I won't lie.
All right, so everybody, I'll have all of his links down below. Make sure you subscribe and follow him everywhere. You won't regret it. I'm pretty sure I've watched all the videos on your YouTube already.
Hopefully, there's a lot more coming out soon. So,
well, the SKS thing you did recently was pretty interesting. That was cool.
I was shocked that I was able to hit that rock at 850 meters. I'm not gonna lie, but
it worked.
It worked, and yeah, it was great. So,
well, I appreciate you coming on the show and spending some time hanging out with us. I told you I was going to try to keep it to 30 minutes, and we're on here almost an hour already. But I could talk. We could do this every night for a week and probably not get to everything we want to talk about. But I appreciate you coming on the show. And everybody, go check his website out. And maybe we can all hang out and get together sometime soon. That'd be pretty cool.
Great. One other thing is if any of your, if any of the questions that you feel like haven't been answered that people have asked, or if you get any emails, more than happy to jump on another live stream like this in a couple weeks or a month or whatever, and we can do it again. So.
Yeah, absolutely. This is fun. And it's easy to pop on here too.
It is. It is.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Adam. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.